Hello rogues and witches. Two of my friends gifted me Wo Long Fallen Dynasty for the holidays, and I finished its main story. I have not played New Game Plus. The PC performance for this game is pretty horrible. If you have an opportunity to play it on console, you'd probably be better off. PS5 on performance mode is the best way to experience this game, I think. If you must play on PC, definitely lower settings and use DLSS or dynamic resolution type stuff to maintain a smooth frame rate, which matters a lot in a game where you're going to be parrying attack chains in real time. That out of the way, it's quite fun. It's by Team Ninja, who also made Nioh, which I have been struggling to enjoy because I'm bad, as well as more famously Ninja Gaiden, which I really love, and is the reason I know of them and still play their games today. Hopefully we get a new one for the anniversary. I know Ragebound is coming, but we all know what fans really want, so fingers crossed. Recently they also made Rise of the Ronin, which is one of my favorite games of all time. It's pretty chill and fun to run around open worlds that have cut out basically all possible friction when it comes to the popcorn feeling of ticking icons and blasting through side objectives at 10 billion miles per hour. Finally they made Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, which is absolutely fantastic and definitely one of the more unique Final Fantasies, if I may so describe it. It's worth it. Team Ninja tend to make melee action games, and in recent times, they've been pretty clearly inspired by From's Soul series, as well as loot games like Borderlands, Diablo, Path of Exile, and the like. Despite this obvious inspiration, their most famous modern game, Nioh, plays very differently at its core from any Dark Souls or Elden Ring. It's honestly even quite different from Sekiro. You know what's not that different from both Souls and Sekiro though? Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. Wo Long is the game Team Ninja fans dislike the most. If you know why Nioh is often praised and for what reasons, you can probably see why, but some of those reasons are part of why I enjoyed running through this game. Like Rise of the Ronin, it's just kind of chill in a way Nioh will never decide to be. It's the most traditional Souls-like they've ever made, and probably their simplest game in this format. To qualify that, here are examples of how Wo Long is more similar to Souls than it is to Nioh. In Nioh you get a ton of random rolled loot, which is very outside the norm for Souls-likes, whose weapon drops are often few, bespoke, and with very fixed stats. You get way less loot in Wo Long, and crucially it's not leveled the way it is in Nioh, it's only raritied. It basically has a star rating. A 4-star thing is better usually than a 2-star thing. Easy stuff. You improve equipment by finding steel for weapons and leather for armor of varying grades. Grade 1 steel can improve weapons to some extent, then you need grade 2 steel, and so on. This is familiar, it's the system From uses in games from Demon Souls all the way up to Bloodborne and Elden Ring. These two traits combine into the third. Unlike Nioh, where swapping gear often is pretty critical to survival, in Wo Long you can find success by grabbing a weapon and some armor you really like and just upgrading it as the game goes on. I didn't change my sword and my armor pieces as I played the game to test for myself if it would punish me for playing that way, and it didn't. I was just fine. In fact, because I explored thoroughly, even with no grinding at all, by the time I reached the final boss I had 2 more flash charges than I needed to beat him on my first try. Wo Long actually has invasions. Just like in Souls, they're subjected to some horrible lag in netcode. On a wired Ethernet connection, people were still teleporting all over the place and making my game stutter, when the performance was already miserable. Luckily, you can turn off invasions from players in the options menu, which I wouldn't have done if the game functioned smoothly while they were happening. All of this is basically a step back from the uniqueness Nioh delivers to the players who really love it. Those who love Nioh want interesting gear to make decisions and crazy builds with. That doesn't really exist here. Those who love Nioh want weapons whose variety and difference from each other isn't just contained inside of a single attack string, and they want skills that can be freely slotted and used as appropriate to the situation. Those who love Nioh hold as their favorite parts of those games not how they're similar to Dark Souls, but how they're different from it, and Wo Long just doesn't super care about that so much. On the flip side, that's why I've been able to enjoy it, after I took it for what it is. The similarity to something else does have a benefit, and that benefit is an immediate, intuitive level of skill you have that you didn't actually have to work for. Wo Long is basically that game where, if you've played Souls and have some basic understanding of Team Ninja game feel, you pretty much start out already good at it, which is why so many people, including me, say the game is so easy. If you're looking to relax and have a chill time, like I was, this game is great for that. If you love Nioh and enjoy the stress that game puts on you though, you won't find that here and your craving will be unfulfilled. Importantly, some of the Nioh DNA is still here, because they just couldn't help themselves. It's a part of what gives this game some extra charm, and it's why some Team Ninja fans might still have a decent time with it. It also means that if you are primarily a Souls or Elden Ring player and want a very easy onboarding game to help you get into Team Ninja's catalog, Wolong is a good choice because you'll get to grips with a handful of concepts Nioh will have in it when you play it, alongside Team Ninja's unique game feel that's also present in their other games, all while playing something that still feels pretty familiar to what you're used to. Wolong is a bunch of selectable main and side stages rather than an interconnected world, that you play through in bite-sized chunks. This is something you'd be used to from Nioh, and this game is still structured like that, so if you play this one first and go to that, it'll be familiar. The general speed and pace of combat is still quite fast, just like Nioh's is, down to the way hit stun feels on both you and enemies being the same. Speed is a really vital aspect of all of Team Ninja's games. Even the fastest non-Sekiro From games have much slower combat than the slowest Team Ninja titles, and Wolong keeps true to that. There are still tiered loot drops that you can sell, salvage, or change mods on, and despite getting much less of that per play session, they're still in the game, so this aspect remains if you enjoy tinkering with build crafting, although to a far simplified degree. The grapple mechanic from Nioh is also here, whereupon you posture break or stamina drain an enemy or boss and can then press triangle to cash out for big damage when your lock-on indicator has turned red. This also has common ground with Sekiro, which we'll take a moment to talk about, because we really have to talk about it. I think an important thing to bear in mind is that Nioh 1 actually released 2 years before Sekiro. That said, by the time of Wolong, someone at Team Ninja pretty evidently liked the kid's style because they took some of the more satisfying aspects from it for themselves. Instead of stamina or ki, you have spirit, which means light attacking doesn't actually cost you anything but your animation time. In fact, light attacking enemies puts your spirit gauge into the positive, so basic attacks actually give you stamina for landing them, whether they're blocked or not. When you play Wolong, you're going to be reminded a lot of Sekiro's posture system. Blocking too much will guard break you, an enemy being hit by you or blocking you too much will guard break them, and you can then do a death blow on them which, even if it doesn't kill, will deal a huge amount of damage. Obviously, grapples on key broken foes exist in Nioh, but paired with deflects and how the spirit system works on consistent aggression, the inspiration here can't be ignored, it's pretty obvious. Deflects. What a great mechanic. Team Ninja thinks so too, because there are 3 games in a row that use them. Wolong and Rise of the Ronin have a kind of rhythmic timed parry button that you can use to deflect away long, beautiful attack sequences. The deflect in Wolong and the counter spark in Ronin, and how even Stranger of Paradise's Soul Shield feels like it counts when you consider you never actually want to be holding that down. Tapping it just in time feels like the least dangerous way to use it. The deflect here is a lot easier to time than Ronin's counter sparks from what I experienced, and it's actually attached to your dodge button. Tapping circle in a direction will do a quick step in that direction, and if you did that just as an attack landed on you, you'll deflect it, damaging the enemy's spirit and giving you a really juicy, satisfying spark as your weapons clash. If you tap circle while standing still, you'll raise your weapon to briefly deflect without dodging. The fun thing about deflect in Wolong is that it works on everything. Literally everything in the game. Most games would have such a limitation. You can't deflect a sweep in Sekiro. Wolong has no such restriction, because Team Ninja are staffed by maniacs, and they have still not discovered how to give a fuck. I'm pretty sure you can even deflect fall damage, which is very funny. The old joke of D&D rogues asking, hey, can I uncanny dodge the end of the world, is basically something you can actually do here. The downside to this is that the way you defend yourself is essentially the same against every single situation, and this homogenization of defensive play can eventually bore players, as the only thing you ever have to keep in mind is timing that button press. Even Sekiro was aware of this, and certain types of attacks were better responded to by non-deflect actions, like jumping, dashing forward, and some are even best avoided by simply sprinting to the side to physically move Sekiro's body clear of the attack's impact if it's something that has poor tracking. The benefit to this is that it just feels so cool. It's just tricky enough to keep you on your toes if you're encountering an enemy for the first few times and haven't memorized their attack chains. Once you do though, it's pure power fantasy as you slip into the kind of flow state that only being a wuxia-style legendary hero can provide. That's also what I love about this game overall. If you're waiting to get your next Dynasty Warriors fixed after playing the Origins demo, since that game is still on the horizon, Wolong can keep you fed for a little while. Its flavor, combat, animations, and vibe are pretty unique in that they lean on Chinese feel, Chinese martial arts, and Chinese fantasy, which is something that is a bit more rare in gaming and is always fun for me to enjoy. Chinese martial arts, kung fu, and melee combat usually have a distinct, flowing grace to them that is really noticeable whenever you press the attack button here. I touched on this earlier when I mentioned how Wolong is Team Ninja's most traditional Souls-like, but now that I've described other aspects of the game, I can dive back into this topic more deeply since I think it's fundamental to how this game was received and what its legacy is for fans. Wolong's defining trait in contrast to Team Ninja's previous games is simple. It cuts out a massive amount of Nioh's complexity. This is not something Nioh fans are happy about, because that complexity is attached to that game's depth, and that suffers here too. Here's a short list of pretty massive things that are missing, and short reasons why they matter. There are no stances here. On top of that, new skills for weapons are random rolled when those weapons drop. They don't get unlocked on your character as you play, only magic does. That means where weapons in Nioh have 3 movesets each, a weapon in Wolong only really has one single combo that never really changes for the entire game. There is no need to key pulse for stamina management, since stamina is not a thing, and you just get tons of spirit for attacking aggressively. Just mash your light attack all the time, unless something is about to hit you. Active skills in Wolong are also simplified. They're either found on weapon, meaning different drops of the same sword might have different martial arts slotted on them, or they're in your wizardry spells tree, which uses one of the 5 elements to cast various spells which are all pretty streamlined and don't have a huge amount of potential synergy. With that being said, Wolong is very much its own experimental game that does some creative things. The way power level relative to enemies works is really interesting. To make sense of it, you should first remember Wolong is based on Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Think Dynasty Warriors. All the famous personas from there are hanging around. Yes, Lu Bu is here. He's hard as fuck to kill. So how does having Dynasty Warriors and Three Kingdoms flavor color the game system so uniquely? The conceit is that all stages take place on various battlefields, and engaging in war means controlling territory is crucial, just like claiming bases is in a Musou game. This combines with the more traditional Souls inspirations to create something pretty distinct. Killing enemies gives XP, dying drops it and as one foe absorb it, killing that enemy gives it back to you. Resting at base flags, which are like bonfires or sites of grace, lets you put that XP into 5 virtues, which are different elements: wood, earth, metal, fire, and water. They interact with and counter each other in different ways, while giving the character you're building different benefits. Wood increases your HP, water improves your stealth and your parries, fire gives you more spirit for being aggressive, metal improves toxin and lets you poison more consistently. All of this is familiar, if a little Wolong flavored. Back to the battlefields thing though. Since it's set on battlefields, in each stage you run around taking flags, basically claiming space. The more flags you claim, it's like you're controlling territory, and this raises your minimum morale, which is Wolong's unique mechanic for judging how strong you are relative to your enemies in each stage. To simplify it for this video, in addition to your normal character level you increase with XP through the whole game, you also have a different level that sits on top of that one. You raise your morale in each stage you play, separate from the morale you have in other stages, and it's in your best interest to explore thoroughly and claim as much territory as you can, because it makes your enemies in that level weaker compared to if you ignore the system. It's very easy to take advantage of. All you have to do is just explore decently, so it helps that exploration's pacing is really fast here. The way you do all this is by taking flags and killing enemies. If an enemy kills you, you lose some of your morale when you respawn, and they actually take some of yours, leveling up off of you until you take vengeance on them. By taking enemy flags and putting your own down, this is permanent and can never go away or regress, you're making yourself constantly stronger by saying to the game, I can never be weakened below this point, no matter how much I die. Morale does one critically important thing that is a complete game changer for some players, and if you're someone who wanted to like Nioh but bounced off, you may want to try Wolong for this one single reason. High morale relative to your enemy limits the amount of damage they can do to you with even their most devastating attacks. Why does this matter? Have you ever been hit by a grab in Nioh that just killed you instantly, and you could have sworn you dodged it but you died anyway? Obviously you didn't, but in the moment you don't give a damn that it was a skill issue. In that moment of frustration, you don't care about whether or not you could practice more or get better gear or learn the boss more and space it so it doesn't use that bullshit, annoying, horrible, stupid, fucking awful grab no game designer worth a damn would ever put into an action game. You're kinda just hating your life, right? Same, buddy. Me too. Well, Wolong doesn't have those. I have never ever been one-shotted by a grab in the entire time I've played this game. I've been killed by them when I was already missing half my HP, but that's on me, and they're usually pretty well telegraphed and more comfy to react to. On the flip side, the level of power you can attain, how simple combat is relative to Nioh, and the lack of unlucky one-shots does mean the game feels way easier overall. And if you hunger to manage the distinct kind of stress Team Ninja are really good at forcing onto you in Nioh, this game will fail to engage you in the way you hope for. There's one other aspect that makes this even truer, and it's something Team Ninja have played around with in their previous games, but full sent and went all the way with when they moved on to Wolong, Stranger of Paradise, and Rise of the Ronin. Party members. Wolong has party members. As you play the game, you'll unlock the ability to deploy NPC allies to your battlefields with you. They each have their own element they focus on from one of the 5 virtues, they have their own weapon type and tendencies, and they even have unique passive traits that can help you in various ways, like helping you detect nearby flags, making enemies vulnerable to damage if you hit them with a ranged weapon, letting you heal whenever you deflect red critical attacks, and so on. You could simply choose to ignore this system, and I'm sure some people will, but the game is very clearly built to let you feel how cool it is to run around these battlefields with famous heroes and historical legends from that era. Again, especially if you already know some of these names from playing Dynasty Warriors or enjoying other Three Kingdoms stories before, you'll probably find this really fun. What I'm trying to say is that while you could play the game without party members, it does lose an aspect of its liveliness, since these aren't just random blue revenants you're summoning. They're real characters you meet in the story. They're characters who each have their own relationship meter you fill up to level 10 until they become your sworn brother, and give you their special gear set. So you have good reasons to actually be playing with these people and keeping them by your side. That means if you're engaging with the game as Team Ninja hope and expect you to, it's yet another reason it becomes so much easier. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but you do have to know this is the kind of game you're playing. Code Vein was a lot like this as well, and I wonder if some of the inspiration might have come from there. The one saving grace is that, because there are so many different party members in this game, if you do want to ignore them, you can a little bit more than in Code Vein, because one thing that game did pretty well at was having some semblance of focus and fleshing them out a little bit more, which is something that isn't really the case here. Code Vein actually took it a lot further than this game, since different party members even respond emotionally in different ways depending on what kind of areas you're in, the enemies you're fighting, and other small factors. So a lot of the storytelling and characterization in Code Vein is something you miss out on if you don't take them with you, and as someone who got very attached to Mia and Io, I couldn't dream of soloing Code Vein, not because I can't technically do it, but because it would be a less fun experience without them by my side. Wolong doesn't really lean on that to such an extent, but you might still have your favorite guy, since due to their passives, what allies you deploy with are basically part of your build, and in a game where customization is less in-depth than Nioh in so many ways, you may not want to cut yourself off from even more ways you could define your playstyle. Overall, while I recognize the limitations and obvious downsides compared to Team Ninja's other output, I really enjoy this game because its simplicity also gives it a kind of relaxing vibe that you can just chill to for a few hours whenever you sit down to play. It's a good podcast game, basically. You kill enemies with melee, ranged, and magic with a variety of weapons from light to humongous, and fight bosses by parrying the shit out of everything they do in a very satisfying Sekiro-like manner. Wolong is a lot like life. You take things a step at a time, improve yourself incrementally, overcome challenges, Lu Bu is there. It's pretty fun, I would recommend it if you like this kind of game. Just know the technical state is rough, and download the free demo before committing to a purchase. Thanks for listening. May fog shroud you, may stars light your way, and may the night keep you safe.